session is about one of the forces that make our modern life possible. It is for those of you who wish to know how things work. Look under the bonnet to see what's going on, so to speak. Let's take one example. We're all using the motor car. Did you know, as the car drives along, it uses up to 26 different ways of electromagnetism? This is a YouTube contribution, and I'll give the link at the end of the session. This video presentation will show a number of different ways of electromagnetism, from the grassroots up and extending to the 1/3 of a million volts. That is the so-called net that spans all over the country to bring power into our homes. For a start, let us ask, what is a field? A field, in the sense of this presentation, is a force that we cannot see. It is invisible. We can only detect what it does. One of the fields is gravity. And if I let this bottle go, it falls to the ground. A more dramatic way of showing how this field operates is this particular globe. It is suspended in space due to magnetic forces that are around it. It is creating a field that levitates, as it were, levitates this ball and makes it float up in space. Just to repeat, we cannot see this force. We can only see what it does. The picture shows a block of wood over which there is stretched a copper wire. Above it hangs a compass-like little magnet that, of course, aligns itself to the magnetic field of the Earth. If we put a current through the wire, which is indicated by when the light is on, it shows that we are sending an electric current through the wire, and the compass-like thing hanging on the thread will align itself to the field we have created. This effect is very weak, as we have only this one for demonstration purposes, and for practical purposes we use a coil where every turn accumulates the effect and makes it useful for practical applications. What is really the difference between a magnet and an electromagnet? Here we have a magnet. We put it into these steel balls, and they are stuck. We have to manually remove them to get away from it. However, if we have an electromagnet and switch it on, This will attract the steel balls, and if I switch off, they fall off. Electromagnetism can be switched on and switched off. If you remember this particular rule, you know something about what electromagnetism is about. When we look at these generators, we may ask ourselves, what is the principle of power generation? This demonstration consists of the following parts. First of all, we have a magnet, we have a coil, and we have a meter to show us that something is happening. If we move the magnet over the coil, you can clearly see how electricity is produced. If we don't move the magnet, nothing happens. The magnet has to move, and that's the important point in generating electricity. But this instrument goes even further. If this portion is sitting outside on a rock, and this one, the magnet, is suspended from a spring and centered, it could detect earthquakes as far away other side of the earth. To get away from all those demonstrations and look at something that is really functional, in my active years I took from a discarded printer a motor and put it into this box. And I showed my students that you can turn and generate electricity very efficiently. And now see how it operates. This motor will carry no load. It is only for demonstration purposes. The rotating part of a motor is called an armature. So we call this also an armature. There's a concealed switch somewhere around there. If we use the armature without a switch, it'll align itself to the given field. If we use the armature with a switch, the armature will turn. What exactly happens? When the armature turns, it turns up to a certain point, and then the switch switches off. So this electromagnet is not an electromagnet anymore, and inertia keeps it going, so it goes up to there, and then gets a new push, and we get it around, and so the armature returns. And the cycle continues. This is a transformer. Again, it is of no practical use. It is only to demonstrate how a transformer works. We have first of all, a coil on this side, which develops a field, a magnetic field, which is number 2, and goes around there unable to escape. On this side, we have another coil that now changes back this magnetic force into electricity. The turns ratio between this to that one determines the output voltage. If we say have 1,000 turns on this side, and on this side only 100 turns, instead of 200 volts input, we're getting 20 volts output. However, the current, of course, capability would be 10 times higher. During my active years, I used a number of novel demonstration models. Examples are the use of the power data inside this coil that produce the sound of source. The next one is the spark model, which has 30,000 volts generated by electromagnetism, and this shows how a car wheel goes backwards whilst the car is moving forwards. And for instance, the AWA model that shows the behavior of valves. The following excerpt is from a production from many years ago.
This instrument shows us how we reflect an electron beam with a magnet nearby. This shows us how we get pictures on our computers and TVs.
Some of those demonstration models are fixed in my classroom and they cannot be transported. For instance, we have the east-west compass. In the picture, you see the white wire, which is a radio, and behind it you see the complex transmission line, which we are going to talk about next. In the following example, we are going to transmit the necessary power to over several meters to a headlight, which is in the other side of the room. We're going to do this in 3 different ways. The first is the copper method. It is efficient, however, in the real world would take up an enormous amount of copper and be most unsightly, so it is out of the question. The second method in an attempt to send the whole energy through thin wires is the method that Edison would have used. Edison refused to accept the alternating current of Nikola Tesla, and he insisted on DC transmitting, and he would have transmitted the whole nation over as in DC, well, some distance away from the powerhouse. The result is obvious. In our third example of connecting the headlight, we are using a different method. We are using a transformer, which in our model is lifting up the voltage to 350 volts. and the transformer on the other side of the room, which is above the headlight, takes it down again and sends the resulting now down to the headlight. What happens in practice in our world? That is explained by a simple diagram. AC is simpler to produce. The output of the electrical power from the generators is fed into a transformer that is close to the powerhouse. Will transform up the voltage, the existing voltage, to maybe 100,000 volts or more, and send it over a long distance to a remote place where the opposite transformer transforms it down again, which is exactly analogous to our model before. This high voltage is able to be transmitted from over many kilometers from the powerhouse to the remote city, and this is used for industrial and domestic chores. Everything has an end, only the sausage has two, I heard someone say. At the beginning, I promised to give you the link of why a car operates on 26 different systems of electromagnetism. The link is tiny.cc/PETS85. I sincerely thank you for watching. Goodbye.